YouTube! How's it going? You good? What you been up to, guys? I hope you're all ready for Christmas. So we've only got, what, 14 days? 15 days to go? Oh, it's getting close, guys. Right. Anyways, let's get down to the video. This is going to be a talking head video. I know I'm kind of running out of time. I'm trying to do 100 million things at once. But I'm going to try and get this video out. Obviously, once we're past Christmas, I'm going to have to slow stuff down so that I can build up the quality over everything else. But I'm going to try and keep this video a day going until we're there. But in this one, guys, I just want to talk to you about something that really gets on my wick about the PC space, especially when it comes to like YouTube and stuff like that. And literally, look, I believe that healthy competition is a good thing when it comes to tech and stuff. It pushes innovation. You know, if you don't have competition, stuff gets stagnant. So I love the competition and the competitiveness in the tech space between AMD and Nvidia. But I can't lie to you guys, the fanboy isms that happen in the PC space is insane. And whether you want to admit it or not, it is far stronger from one side than the other. I don't think I'm going to leave anyone out, because let's be honest, both sides blow things out of proportion. But there's only one side I find constantly feels like it needs to manipulate and downspeak the other side. Like, in just general, it's like the worst, and I'm going to get hate for this comment, but genuinely the worst fanboys when it comes to the PC space are the AMD fanboys. They are awful, right? And you say this, but genuinely, when I've made a video, if the choices that I've made have been Nvidia or have been Intel, right? Purely, the reason I'm making those choices is purely because of performance over price. That's literally the only reason. But if I'm choosing an AMD product, yeah, I never ever feel like I have to explain why I'm choosing that AMD product. Like, it's just sort of okay. You make that as a decision, it's just okay. You know, that seems to be not a problem. You pick an AMD product, oh yeah, well, obviously. But if there's an Intel product that offers better performance for less price at that given moment in time, like a recent video just on builds up to Christmas before the RAM crisis happened, 12th gen Intel was such an incredible deal, especially with the fact that the motherboards were so cheap. That is what I recommended, because if you're working at that budget, what you want is best performance, lowest price. And unfortunately, at that given moment in time, possibly still now, 12th gen Intel was that over AMD. It offered better performance for the money that you were paying for it. But by the by, like, if I'd have chosen an AMD platform, no one would have questioned it. Yet because I chose Intel, and because obviously the best GPUs on the market in the use space at the moment are the 3060 Ti, the 3070 and the 3080. But the problem is, they didn't sell as many of the AMD cards. So when it's come to the used market a few years later, the AMD cards are basically nowhere to be seen. Obviously, the AMD name has got big hype on it at the minute because of 90 series and the X3D. So that has hiked the prices of them up, which have put them in price ranges that are far above their performance, which means why would I recommend the AMD cards if the Nvidia cards are better performing for less money? But I have to explain that. Why? Because the majority of the fanboyism is the AMD side. It's those that I have to convince why I'm picking a card from the other side. It's crazy. Now, don't get me wrong, right? There are some things that are truthful, and there are some things that are just flat out lies from both sides of the equation. right? Don't think we're going to leave anyone out, right? When it comes to nefarious behavior, oh, they're both bad for it. Like, we could go back as far as, was it the 900 series for a NVIDIA? The 970 was classed as a 4 GB card, but it only had 3.5 GB of super fast memory, and then half a gigabyte of this like slow as fuck ass shit, which meant that as soon as you tipped into that last half gigabyte, all of your VRAM just went slow, and it would chug the system. It was absolutely, and that was just NVIDIA trying to brush it through, get some cheaper RAM on that last half gig, save a little bit of money. That's disgusting. With the 10 series, they got pushed about the 1060 being a 6 GB card and a 3 GB card. Was also a trimmed down card, the 3 GB card. So they got a lot of grief for that. But what no one really paid any attention to was AMD did the exact same thing with their GPU. You could actually consider it worse, because with AMD's GPU, it was the 580, which was a legendary little card from AMD. It was the 580, and that came in an 8 GB card. Then later came in a 4 GB version, but then later came in a cut down version for both the 8 GB and the 4 GB. Whereas with NVIDIA, yeah, all right, the 3 GB was a cut down version of the 6 GB, but the 3 GB was a cut down version of the 6 GB. Whereas over on AMD's side, the 580 8 gig had a 4 gig version, and then there was a cut down version which also had an 8 gig and a 4 gig. So it's like, which one's worse? And any AMD fanboy that's either 6,000 or 7,000 or 9,000 joining in, and they think that AMD's been the same as they have been through those generations previously, you're wrong. Like, the fact of the matter is, up until 6,000 series, like, AMD didn't really compete. Like, there was always like 2 or 3 NVIDIA cards above them in the stack, certainly from like the 900, 700 possibly forwards. There was always a few NVIDIA cards above them in the stack. And even past that, with the cards in the stack, like, the fact of the matter is, like I said, AMD's flagships were competing with NVIDIA's mid-range. It was only 6,000 series where they really brought the performance. And to be honest, and it was only 6,000 series where they really sort of unified their whole stack. You see, before that, at least the 3 generations previous to that, AMD were literally trying to have this premium level. It was sort of like pauper class, premium class with these cards. Now, don't get me wrong, the three attempts at this, which was started with the R9, with the R9 Fury, then Vega, and then the worst of the lot, Radeon 7. Now, these all released alongside other cards. The R9 obviously released alongside the R9 stack. And then the Vega cards, they were the high-end cards for the 500 generation. So, and NVIDIA didn't really try any of that bullshit. Now, don't get me wrong, those cards did bring something kind of cool with them. What was it, HBM memory or something? It's a fancy VRAM that basically meant that their throughput, their bus width, was insanely huge. But we soon figured out that basically the GPUs were nowhere near powerful enough to actually deal with that huge amount of bandwidth, and it didn't really make much difference to the performance either. But for example, you've got to look at the Radeon 7. The Radeon 7 released for 700 quid. Now, when they released that for 700 quid, AMD knew that they were releasing, like 3 months later or something, the 5700 XT, which is literally like 5% at most slower than the Radeon 7, and was 400 quid. So basically they were just literally trying to scalp early adopters with Radeon 7. And then Radeon 7 literally gets sacked off on the drivers 2 years later. That's appalling. Nvidia's never tried any of that kind of crap. Like, they've tried their crap, but I mean, at the minute, genuinely, I'm aware that they perform okay, but me personally, I do not believe that anyone should buy a 60 class in the 50 series this generation. If you need to be in that sort of price range, I would look at either used, because you can get like a 3070 for like 250 quid. You get a 3080 for like 300 quid. Like, they are more performant than a 5060. Like, the 3070 is 30% faster than a 5050, and you can find them cheaper than a 5050. So it's like, do not buy cards down in that stack. I'll tell you why. It's that 8 PCIe Gen 5 lanes. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a problem with the impact. Well, no, there isn't a problem if you're 12th gen or past or over on AM5. If you're on those platforms, there's not a problem because you've got PCIe Gen 5, not an issue. But as soon as you drop down to PCIe Gen 4, you're literally cutting your bandwidth in half, which was already at basically the width of 16, PCIe Gen 4 by 16. So you're already cutting that in half, which is what most GPUs actually kind of run with. Then if you've got an even older system and you just want to try and spruce it up with a new GPU, do not get a 50 series Nvidia if you're on got PCIe Gen 3 system, because that is literally a quarter of the expected bandwidth for that card, and it's because of those 8 lanes. You should see some issues at that point. So I personally just do not recommend anyone buy a card that's got 8 lanes. So either buy if you're in that bottom sector, the 60 class sort of price range, even at the TIs, just get the equivalent AMD card, be it the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. I don't necessarily recommend the 8 gigabyte because, again, like I said, you can literally buy an 8 gigabyte card on the used market for less money that performs better. So what do you want from me? You know, it's like 40 quid less money for 3080. Yeah, it's got a bit less VRAM than like a 16 gigabyte 9060 XT, but it is also like 20% faster in raw performance. So which way do you go? Like, Nvidia are bastards. They are. I'm not trying to take away from that, but so are fucking AMD. Like, they've been so nefarious in the GPU market. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that AMD's CPU side, on the CPU side, they have more than earned their respect in their support, in the fact that AM4 ran for so long as a platform, which allowed you to just up your CPU. Not that anyone regularly upped their CPU, because obviously, unless you're every generation buyer of a CPU, then yeah, fair enough. But if you're the sort of person to go a good few years before upgrading your CPU, yeah, the idea of AM4 is cool. You know, you could just drop the old CPU into your motherboard with a BIOS flash. But to be honest, I feel like once you've gone a few years, you kind of need the motherboard upgrade as well, because all the stuff that comes with the newer platforms came with the new motherboards, and they seem to have sold just as well as the CPUs. So I'm kind of saying that everything that AMD fanboys boasted about AM4, none of them really took advantage of, because for the most part, most people would just literally buy a new motherboard when they bought a CPU. Obviously your RAM comes with you, but obviously like AM4's gone through DDR3, DDR4, do you know what I mean? They've been on the same platform. Intel would only support like 2 platforms per motherboard. So it's 10 and 11 are together, 8 and 9 are together, 6 and 7 are together, 4 and 5, and then obviously 12, 13 and 14th was just kind of a bit of a weird one that they put a 3rd generation on there. So but again, like I said, on the Intel side, don't really see much in the way of fanboys, just people that use this shit. On the Nvidia side, again, you see very few, but they are there, NVIDIA fanboys, but they're nowhere near as like obsessed with trying to like overinflate NVIDIA. Most people that use NVIDIA just literally say what you get and how it is. You don't hear any, when an NVIDIA product is being reviewed by someone, you don't hear NVIDIA, you don't hear someone having to like explain that it's so much better than AMD or anything like that. You don't ever hear that. You never ever hear that. If in fact, for the most part, you will hear someone just turn around and go, but for a little bit of money, you could get this AMD product. That's the closest you'll get to an AMD product showing up in an NVIDIA review. Whereas in an AMD review, holy fuck, they have to slate NVIDIA the entire freaking way. I've got content creators that I watch, and that you literally watching them, and they'll be like positive about NVIDIA, and because they're being positive about NVIDIA and because they have bias to AMD, they literally have to like switch around and come up with some fabricated bullshit to why you shouldn't buy NVIDIA and you should just buy AMD. Like, they come up with this like fabricated, wrapped around bullshit, and it's like, look, it doesn't really matter which one you buy. Now, absolutely not. Doesn't matter in the slightest. Finally. And it's so good to be in this position now where you can literally offer AMD and have very few caveats. Because whether you like it or not, whether AMD fanboys like it or not, if you choose AMD over NVIDIA, there are caveats that come with that decision. If you choose NVIDIA over AMD, the only real caveat is money. That's it. Because NVIDIA does everything that AMD does, and all the features and stuff, they're pretty much the same, but a little bit better on every single one of them. So there's always going to be that caveat that comes with AMD. Now, I'm not telling you shouldn't go out and get AMD. I'm not telling you that AMD runs games worse or whatever. That's bullshit. Like, NVIDIA doesn't run shit worse either. That's bullshit. There are some stuff, like obviously with this whole new Redstone, it's new to the product, so it's going to improve over the years. It's not ready yet. It's just not. It's not rendering half the stuff that NVIDIA's reconstruction is rendering, but it's also not at the same sort of quality level either. But it's good. Like, the fact that this is what happened. Basically, AMD were not really competitive up to 6000 series. And then 6000 hit, and what AMD brought with 6000 series and RDNA 2, what AMD brought, finally, AMD brought performance. The raw performance, they were almost matching NVIDIA 1-for-1 on raw performance. The ray tracing and all the other stuff, not so much, but the raw performance was finally there. So because that raw performance was finally there, they could then concentrate on the RT and all the other stuff, because they now, after three, 4 iterations of NVIDIA, they've seen, you know, after 3 of them, they were like, this ain't going away, we best get around and get this done. So they bring out 7000 series, and that leaps and bounds on the RT side from 6000. It came on leaps and bounds. Not quite there yet, but it came on leaps and bounds, and they managed to keep hold of that raw performance match as well. You know, the cards were coming close. The advantage that AMD has is that because people don't buy them immediately, they always drop down in price, which means that they tend to drop a level down in the stack, price on price, which means they're then competing with the card lower than them in the NVIDIA stack, which makes them look more performant in a terms of price to performance at that point, maybe, but other than that, no. And that jump in RT and all the other stuff is why I can't really comfortably recommend a 6000 series card unless it was ridiculously underpriced. because it's going to struggle moving forwards with new games and the technology that it's running. Whereas 7000 series, it's not doing too badly. It's like at between 20 and 30 series. And then like 90 series is like pretty much between 30 and 40 series, maybe stretching on. It's doing really well. I'm not trying to like badmouth AMD on their abilities with RT, because now 9000 series has hit and they finally have caught up. They are finally competitive. And like, I would get called an NVIDIA fanboy. I would get called an Intel fanboy because I have an Intel CPU. I actually have two, but that's just because I already had the motherboard. We'll go and buy a separate one just to have AMD. Come on. And because for the last like almost a decade, I've had NVIDIA. But I've had NVIDIA because of the options that were available to me at the time, and that's it. Like for example, my 5070 Ti here, if AMD's 9070 XT had been at MSRP when I purchased this, I waited for that card to release before I bought a 5070 Ti. I'd saved up to buy this sort of level of class card. I'd been saving up for like well over a year to do that, because I was on that 3060 and I knew I needed to upgrade eventually, and it was getting close. I was already on a 1440p monitor. It was doing okay, but I needed more performance and I wanted something that was going to do me for the next 4 years. So I'd saved up to be in this class to the point where this was going to be a 4070 Ti. It then was going to be a 4070 Ti Super. It became a 5070 Ti. But I literally waited for the 9070 XT to release before I made the decision on the card, because I genuinely was considering that card. And if it had been at MSRP, I would have saved the 100 quid and gone with the 9070 XT. But unfortunately, it wasn't. AMD's pricing was, in the UK, AMD's pricing was far worse than Nvidia's was on launch in this year. Far worse. Cards weren't necessarily available, but we weren't having stupid. There were some that were jumping up in price and stuff like, but it wasn't a huge leap like everyone was trying to fucking display online, which was really, really frustrating from just like a general tech person's position. So like, that's why I've got a 5070 Ti, because when I purchased it, I think it was like 40 quid more expensive for this Phoenix golden sample version, which means I can overclock it. And I'll be honest with you, it's 21K GPU. And now I've seen a specific creator run a benchmark and they only got like 17 and a half, and I was like, why is it getting so low? There's no way my overclock's pushing that much, no? But either way, it overclocks like a little beast. Plus it's built so well. And it was like 40 quid more expensive than the cheapest 9070 XT, which is like the Reaper. I have nothing necessarily against that card. I've not physically hands-on with it, but from what I've seen of it, it's just not my thing. It looks a bit flimsy for me, like, and this is far better built. It's just far better built. I don't know what to tell you. So I just wish the fanboyism would calm the fuck down. And to be honest, like, the AMD fanboys are basically the Sony ponies of the PC tech space. They just are. Like, I just wish you guys would just calm the hell down, right? I'm not a fanboy of either side. I'm a fanboy of tech. I love tech. Like, I don't give a crap. Like I said, this was a price choice. My 3060 was in the middle of the scalpocalypse. Do you know what I mean? I was lucky to get it. Like, I think it was 350 quid or 330 quid or something. It was basically launch price plus 20 quid. And I got the same, I pretty much got my 1080 for around launch price. Now, I had a 1080, there wasn't really much in the way of options from AMD at that point in time. that was going to even get even close. And that car did me so well. And I've got nothing, I get so much hate about the 3060 I have in the years. And I love that little card, yeah. At the end of the day, yeah, that card gave me an extra 15, 25% performance over the top of the 1080. So it was faster. It gave me an extra 50% VRAM. And it was half the price that I paid for the friggin' 1080. And it managed to carry me through years of enjoyment. All the way through COVID and stuff. Years of enjoyment. I've got nothing but love for that little 3060. And the only reason I got it was because it was the best option at that given moment in time. Do you know what I mean? 1080 there wasn't anything released from AMD that was worth even looking at in comparison, in my eyes. There just wasn't. And the same, when it came to the 3060, there just wasn't much else on option in that sort of price range that was going to give me that sort of quality of performance. There just wasn't, and I'm so glad that I did, because DLSS has come in clutch, especially when I jumped onto a 1440p monitor. So yeah guys, can we just stop with the fanboyism please? And yeah, I've been rambling on for too long now. I need to edit this because there's going to be so much to cut out. But I will see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. Love you, bye.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share.
Like and subscribe. Thank you.